It brings empowerment to parents, to youth, and communities.
There's a lot of tools that are introduced in the series, a lot of practical examples, and it really helps me understand, as a parent and as an administrator, ways to more effectively solve some of these problems and address these issues that are complex.
I feel that education is power, and that as we educate ourselves on maybe some of the issues that our society is facing, that we will raise better children, be better families, have better communities.
It's a great opportunity to learn valuable tools to communicate with the youth, to bridge the gap between what we think is going on and what maybe the empirical science and data shows us can help these youth.
I really think it will change lives, change families, and change communities.
Hello, and welcome to the fourth and final webinar in our 2024 Stand and Raise Parent Empowerment Speaker Series. This has been an incredible month. I hope you've had a chance to watch the other 3 presentations. But if you missed last week's inspiring webinar with Don Hawkins from the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, you should have received an email with a link to the recording. And you can also access the webinars from Andrea Davis and Deanna Lamson on the same page at projectstand.org/speakers. If you need help accessing any of them or have any questions about them or any of our content, you can just email us at admin@projectstand.org. So this webinar is hosted by Project Stand. Our mission is to prevent exploitation by empowering youth, parents, and school communities to stand and thrive by using technology in healthy ways. I'm Brittany Homer. I'm co-founder and executive director of Project Stand and mom of 4 kids who both challenge and inspire me every day. We invite you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at projectstand.mediasafety, where you can stay updated on the latest resources that we have for students and parents and advocates and anybody. You can also go to our website and subscribe to receive media safety tips and other updates, including what's happening with legislation relating to keeping kids safe online, which is kind of a big deal right now on the federal level. The last few weeks, I've shared exciting news about a groundbreaking, comprehensive, evidence-based set of media safety education programs, which have been designed collaboratively for K through 12 students and their parents, called Safe Tech Solutions. So Project Stand is thrilled to be joining forces with 3 other nonprofits, White Ribbon Week, Fight the New Drug, and RAISE, which you'll hear a little bit more about today, to provide this empowering programming. And if you're interested in learning more about it or in bringing safe tech solutions to your school district, just reach out on our website, projectstand.org, or you can go to safetechsolutions.org. We'd love to hear from you and tell you all about it. So today the Q&A is open for your questions, and you can add comments in there as well. You can submit them anonymously if you would like to. And at the end of the presentation, I will pull some questions from there. So I am so pleased to introduce today's presenter to you. Clay Olsen is the CEO and founder of Impact Suite, a suite of award-winning on-demand self-care apps that have helped hundreds of thousands of individuals find deeper healing and recovery in over 150 countries. Clay currently sits on the board of directors for a number of different nonprofit organizations and finds a lot of fulfillment in advising entrepreneurs in their efforts to make a dent in the world. So early on in his career, Clay co-founded and led the creation of Fight the New Drug, and that's where I first heard of Clay. It was a youth movement dedicated to raising awareness on the harmful effects of pornography and other forms of sexual exploitation using science, facts, and personal accounts. And it's been featured all over ABC, the New York Times, NPR, CBS, CNN, USA Today, and more. And after 10 years of running Fight the New Drug, Clay now serves as president and sits on the board of directors and helps guide the larger vision of the organization. His newest passion project is the creation of Raise, a free parenting resource dedicated to helping parents navigate the challenges of the current digital landscape with their children while helping them develop healthy relationships with technology. Clay is personally presented at hundreds of secondary schools, universities, and event centers to hundreds of thousands in multiple countries. And I think you'll see why people want him as a presenter, because he's just does such a great job. He's spoken at the United Nations, the World Congress of Families, Carnegie Mellon, the Kansas City Royals, and the Set Free Global Summit. In 2015, Clay was invited to join the Top Youth Speakers National Speakers Association. In 2017, he was honored with the Visionary Leadership Award by the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. And in 2021, he was recognized as one of Utah's top business professionals with the 40 Under 40 Award. On a personal note, Clay, to me, is one of the smartest, boldest, and most creative people I know. I have learned so much from him, and I'm excited to add to that knowledge today as he talks about the mental health crisis that is going on in our world. He's going to help us understand the issues and offer some hopeful solutions. So, Clay, thank you so much for being here, and it's all yours.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I've known Brittany for a number of years and worked with her more directly recently on the Safe Tech Solutions project, which we're very excited about. But yeah, I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for giving me this platform to share some thoughts on mental health. I know that is a topic that we are all we hear a lot about, and there's a lot of thoughts and confusion around what we can do about this and how it relates to our youth. And so I want to spend some time. I'm going to share my screen real quick and jump right in to this presentation. So I've titled the presentation, The Hopeful Paradigm Shift That We So Desperately Need on Mental Health. So I'm going to go into this. But before I really dive into this subject matter, there is a game that I know many of you listening or watching this are familiar with, and the game is SimCity. Now I know this is it's sometimes an outdated game when you talk to a younger audience, but I know that we're talking to some parents, people a little bit more my age, and this is a game that we all remember. And maybe we probably don't currently play it, but it is something that we used to engage in, many of us. And the objective of the game is to create a society that is thriving, happy. The citizens are happy and thriving and progressing. And there are lots of different versions of this game. And for just a thought exercise, I want to invite all of you to kind of consider the possibility that the creators of SimCity created a version or an edition of this game that was maybe slightly less positive or altruistic. Perhaps they come out with an edition called the Depression Edition. So the objective of this particular version of the game isn't to create a thriving society or a thriving community of individuals that are happy and progressing and contributing and supporting one another, but rather just the opposite, a society that is as depressed as possible. And so for fun, and if we were in a live audience, I would actually ask for feedback on this, but what would be some of the things that we would do as the players of this game? What would we do to maximize that outcome, to make the society that we're working with or the community that we're working with as depressed as possible? And we'd probably hear from many of you, we'd probably hear things like, well, we'd probably limit their access to sunlight. We would, put them in front of a screen as often as possible. We would probably pump them full of processed foods and not give them like real nutritionally valuable food. We would probably isolate individuals so that they're communicating through screens and not, to one another. We would probably, and again, I wish I could kind of gather some from you, but we'd probably make them very sedentary, very kind of isolated and not moving a lot. So a lot of time sitting around, not getting their heart rate up. Now, as you kind of maybe throw out a few others, you start to recognize that maybe this fictitious SimCity environment that we're describing isn't so fictitious to so much of our world today. That today, the environment in which we are living, and particularly young people as they are growing up, that the world in which they are growing up in many cases, and for many of them, they are growing up in SimCity Depression Edition. They're living in an environment that is maximizing that risk or that potential. And so in some ways that can kind of give us a little bit of pause or a little bit of recognition to why we are facing such an epidemic, why we are facing something that no generation in the history of the world has ever seen to this scale, that there are contributing factors that aren't so mysterious once we start to get a bird's eye view as to why we're facing these challenges. I mean, if we just look at screen time alone, screen time is definitely something that many of us are concerned about. When we look at entertainment, screen use among teens and tweens per day, we see that individuals 8 through 12, we see the tweens back in 2015, it was a 4.4 hours, and 2021 it increased all the way to 6.4 hours. That's a pretty big bump of 2-hour increase as they age up into teen ages. And then here we didn't see a huge jump there in 2019, but then you see this in 2021, and we saw quite a significant bump again from just looking at the teen audience, a 2-hour increase in just screen time, entertainment screen time. So not useful, productive screen time, but entertainment screen time. Now that has its drawbacks and has its issues, of course. Dr. Chris said that social media was like an atomic or nuclear bomb on teen social life. I don't think there's anything in recent memory or even distant history that has changed the way teens socialize as much as social media does. And that's like, we're hearing that and we're like, yeah, of course, like there is nothing comparative to how much influence social media has had on the way that that particularly young people engage and socialize. Colin Karshner, who many of you remember, who left us too early as he passed away not too many years ago, but he said that handing a tween or teen a smartphone with access to Instagram or Snapchat with zero training, guidance, or monitoring is like handing them keys to the family car at 12 with zero driver's ed. How are we then shocked when they keep crashing and burning? So it's a good kind of way to look at this. Is like, guys, for those of us who have kids that are of age where they are asking for or wanting a phone or social media, thinking more consciously about how we handle that situation, what we choose to do, rather than go with the current, the thrust of mainstream and just handing them a smartphone that has full access to all these things. It's going to, not it could, it's going to have negative consequences on their life. And we need to look at that, and we'll talk more about this here in a moment. Jean Twenge, Dr. Jean Twenge, who wrote iGen, said that every indicator of mental health and psychological well-being has become more negative among teens and young adults since 2012. The trends are stunning in their consistency, breadth, and size. And it's not just symptoms that rose, but also behaviors, including emergency room visits for self-harm, for suicide attempts, and completed suicides. Surgeon General has come out and declared this a crisis of our day. This is something that we need to be thinking about. Now, mental health there are a lot of contributing factors. Social media is a large contributor, but there are many contributors, and we'll talk more about others and spend some time talking about those, because we want to have a general dialogue about mental health, but we can't ignore the influence that social media is having on young people, particularly young female girls. It seems to have a larger negative impact on them than it does in the other demographic. Now, this is my family. I just said young female girls. This is all I have at home. I have 4 beautiful daughters, and they are my life. And they are growing up in a world extremely different than I grew up in. And it's so cliche for an older generation to say, well, things are different when I was growing up. But this is at a scale that no generation before us could really claim, that things are changing at such a rapid pace that the world is not just slightly altered, but so significantly different that there's not a lot of parental or generational scripting that we can rely upon on how to navigate these waters, because again, we are kind of first to the stage of how to handle this. So I worry about these beautiful daughters, and you worry about your kids, and you worry about their ages. Now these daughters now are just slightly older. This is probably a year-old photo, so or just actually probably a year and 6 months old photo. And they are aging, and they are getting to the age where they are interacting with things and stumbling into things that I need to be on my toes about. So the reality is that researchers are referring to this time as a depressogenic, our society as a depressogenic society. I'd never heard that term before, but I think it's a great summary to kind of reference the fact that we're living in an environment that places many of its members or the members of our society at risk for developing depression. That the forces behind us are pushing us in this direction. And Dr. George Albee many years ago was commissioned by the United States government to identify or kind of look into how large of a challenge we were facing. And he discovered, and in his report back to the government, he came back and said that we'll never have enough trained professionals to adequately address the scope of the mental health problems in the United States. Now, there are many efforts to augment this and to assist in this, but the reality is that this is a challenge that goes beyond that which we've seen in previous years. And the problem is getting worse with each generation. This is an interesting statistic. Sometimes we hear stats about, just how many people today are dealing with depression, but we don't often see that broken down into age cohorts. So I want to do that here for you. Back in 2003, and I know that that's over a decade ago, so I'm going to update this in the next slide, but I wanted to start here. In 2003, a study was done where they broke it up into age cohort, looking at major depressive disorder based on age birth cohort. So you look at this, and individuals 60 years or older throughout their lifetime saw roughly around 12% experienced, 11 or so percent experienced a major depressive disorder at some point in their life. Now that's a lot. That's more than 1 in 10. And that is a challenge. This is kind of depression that makes it hard to kind of navigate the world because it's so debilitating. But you go to the next age cohort, and it rises up to 20%. And the next, 25. Again, these people haven't even aged up into the 60 age range or above. And so their timeline is still migrating. But you look at this one. This is the one I want you to draw attention to. Look at the hockey stick there. Look at the trajectory that age, the 18 to 29 group found themselves in. They are seeing levels of depression, levels of loneliness, levels of distress, and levels of anxiety that no generation had seen before on record. And it's distressing. It references the fact that we are heading toward the trajectory of harm is getting worse, and that it's not subsiding. If we update this now to 2020 numbers, at least bringing it up to within the last few years, we start to see that ages 60 plus saw pretty much just over doubling the individuals that had experienced major depressive disorder. So those original bars were the same data that I referenced in the previous graph, but now I'm comparing it with new numbers from 2020, and you see that same age cohort from 2003 to 2020 is again nearly double, and again double, and again 57% ages 18 to 29. So this is meant to kind of singe our eyebrows a little bit intentionally. This is meant to kind of wake us up to maybe what the younger generations are facing that we were not. And it can feel at times like the world is on fire, and we're just kind of saying, hey, everything's fine, everything's normal, keep on going. Let's continue as we are, and just kind of pretend that this is going to just go away, or that they'll be fine, or that I was young once and they'll get over it. The reality is that they're facing something altogether different, and we need to be there to support them on this journey. And excited to share some thoughts. The last kind of maybe concerning slide or statistic I want to share with you is that recent studies have shown that 1 in 4 teenagers think seriously about suicide. It's 1 in 3 teenage girls, but 1 in 4 generally. Now, 1 in 4, if you look at that on a graduating class, this is 100 students. And you look at that, and 22% of those individuals look about like this, that they are seriously contemplating suicide. That's not okay. That's not something that we should accept as just part of our reality. This is a new phenomenon, and that it's something that we can address, and we can look into maybe ways of rethinking and accepting a paradigm shift on how we address this issue. We've spoken to so many young people and parents, hundreds of thousands over the years of individuals that are struggling, that have been struggling with these challenges. And we hear too often that, this is one example of a mother that told us that there is no cure. This is not a cure. He just needs to live with it the best that he can, that his brain is wired in a way that his mental illness will be a monkey on his back for the rest of his life. Now, how many of you have heard that kind of statement, that this is something that is just part of who I am? I lost the genetic lottery. My brain is wired in a certain way, and that cannot be changed. And therefore, the best that I can do is to manage and to cope and to navigate this, with kind of minimizing symptoms through medication, talk therapy, and whatever else. Now, the question is that true? Because if that is true, we have to just embrace it. We have to just kind of say, okay, this is the reality. Let's help those that are neurologically deficient, that have a chemical imbalance, and help them through these methods and means that we've been doing. And by the way, we've been doing them for SSRIs, or the medications that we deploy right now, which have their place. I'm not anti-medication, but they have their place. But we've been relying on those as the solution to this problem in a way. And the studies are showing that they are not leading to the solution. They are in fact, the challenge is getting much worse. So we need to go beyond our traditional methods and traditional approaches, and add to and improve upon that which we've been doing. My own niece suffered from depression, debilitating depression that led her to feel like there was no hope. At the age of 16, she met with her doctor, and her doctor told her that this would be a lifelong condition, that there was no cure, that this was something that she could only essentially manage and cope. And that was a very depressing story to tell about depression. And she felt like it was too much. And she later attempted to take her life on multiple occasions. She was on suicide watch. Today, I'm grateful to be able to share that she's still with us. She's not through the woods. She's still struggling in many ways, but she is still with us. But she is a part of my motivation. I showed pictures of my family and my kids. I look at my own niece, and these are the reasons that I am so passionate about trying to help individuals navigate these waters. I feel like Dr. Ilardi from the University of Kansas summarizes this maybe better than anybody. He said that our brains were never designed for the sedentary, indoor, sleep-deprived, socially isolated, fast food-laden, screen-addicted, frenetic pace of modern life. Now, isn't that beautiful? It just kind of illustrates the SimCity depression edition beautifully in this quote. That this is the world in which we're growing up in, and that your youth are growing up in, and that this is having an impact, and that this is not an insignificant influence or contributor to the challenges that we face as a society. And we have more information about the brain and the way that the brain operates and what is leading to genetic expression. We often hear about like, well, I'm genetically predisposed, but what people don't understand is that genetic expression the brain is constantly changing and altering based on what we are doing, what we're participating in, what we are reading, what we are watching, the activities we engage in, the conversation that we're having. The brain is constantly rewiring and altering and molding and advancing. And genetic expression relies upon that data and information, so that some genetic predispositions can be activated or amplified, whereas other times through different actions they can be subdued, or even in effect you can think of it as being turned off. And so that we have much more control over our genetic or our influencing our genetic expression than we previously believed. And experience truly does change, actually change, physiologically change, neurologically change the brain. I want to tell you a quick story because this is really helpful. So if I've lost you along the way, let me bring you back into this story because this is important. The Kaluli tribe. This is a tribe based in the northern region of Papua New Guinea in the rainforest area. And this is a tribe largely, as you can tell, largely disconnected from modern ways of living, largely disconnected from medical advancements, social media, computers, internet, all of it, cars, automobiles, all of it. And a doctor by the name of Dr. Edward Schifflin was curious about the human genome, whether or not depression was just part of our human genome, part of our makeup, which would indicate that people around the world would be facing similar levels of depression, and it's just part of our human experience. And so he wanted to kind of prove that out or understand it better. So he went first to this tribe in Papua New Guinea. And in his words, I'll use his quote, he said that despite living very hard lives with none of the material comforts or medical advances that we take for granted, clinical depression is almost completely non-existent. So he surveyed, again, right here, with only one person in over 2,000 interviews who came close to meeting diagnostic criteria for depression. He surveyed 2,000 members of this tribe and did a rigorous kind of assessment and a questionnaire to identify if any of them were struggling with depression, finding that only one came close to, not even qualifying for diagnostic criteria for depression, which was a significant, it just shocked him, because he later was said, well, whoa, that is very different from the data that we're gathering in the Western world. And that's very interesting. He later did more studies, and other researchers joined kind of other studies, and they looked at tribes in parts of South Africa and other parts of Africa, South America, and even among the Amish here in the United States. And they virtually found the same result. What this led researchers and experts to understand and comprehend is that depression and addiction are diseases of lifestyle. They're diseases of environment. They're conditional, much like diabetes and obesity and cancer, many forms of cancer. That depression and anxiety are diseases of lifestyle and environment, rather than kind of a predetermined genetic reality, that there's something to our way of living that is amplifying and exacerbating these challenges and even creating them in some instances. Now this, I love this quote by Johann Hari, who said that your depression makes sense. How often do you hear that? Your depression makes sense? What? Your depression makes sense. Your depression and anxiety are not malfunctions. That's all we hear. Your depression is a malfunction of the brain. It's something that, physiologically wrong with your neurological makeup of your brain, and therefore you're facing this. They're not, he says that your depression and anxiety are not malfunctions. They are signals. I love that, because it treats it more like we would physical pain. Like if I have my hand on the stove top, physical pain would tell me to make an alteration, like change, the location of my hand so that I can remove it from that dangerous reality, that dangerous physical spot. Now, but with our emotional distress and our emotional challenges, we don't often think of it like that. We don't often think of it as a signal to learn from and to pay attention to, but rather we look at it as something that has to go away right now, to smother it, to numb it out, to make it go away. And if we rather give space to to the distress or depression or the emotions that we're feeling, give space to it, and recognize that they are not us, but that they are something that we are experiencing and feeling. And then listen and pay attention to. I know that's hard, and maybe I'm getting into a space where people are going, you're losing me. But the reality is that if we can treat it more like a signal to help identify maybe things in my life, environmental conditions, whether it be the food that I eat or the exercise that I'm not getting or the sunlight exposure that I need, or the past trauma that I need to deal with, or whatever it may be, the meaning and purpose that is driving me forward, whatever I need to pay attention to help address those emotional distresses. Now, Cambridge just came out with a study back last year. Now, this is beautiful. They did a study where they looked at the association between lifestyle and depression, and the correlation between the two. And what they found, and I could spend a lot more time on this, but for time's sake, I'll just kind of summarize it by saying that genetics, this is a quote from the study, genetics and environmental factors, such as lifestyle factors, are both important in regards to risk for depression. However, our study suggests that lifestyle factors may play a greater role. So essentially, genetics do play a role, but less than we previously believed. And lifestyle does play a role, but more than we previously believed. And we need to pay attention to those conditions and those realities. This is not me advocating for us to all move up into the mountains and detach from modern ways of living, but rather to recognize its influence on us and maybe push towards more healthy versions of that. Now, all of this should be astoundingly hopeful information for the individual that was told that this would be a lifelong condition, that there's nothing that they could do, that they lost the genetic lottery. For those people that felt completely like my niece, that there was no hope for them moving forward, this should give them a light at the end of the tunnel saying, oh my goodness, there are many contributing factors to perhaps why I'm feeling this way, which indicates that there are many contributing factors that can pull me away from it or that can improve my situation. There are things that I can do in my own home, in my own environment, in my own life that can help improve this situation. When we understand what is really causing our depression and anxiety, we can get at the deeper solutions, not just the numbing, not just the Band-Aids, but the deeper long-term solutions to this challenge. So now, for essentially the remaining of this presentation, I want to, and I know I don't have too much longer, but I want to go through, we did a study. We surveyed thousands of individuals who claimed that they had overcome depression, that depression was no longer a struggle. Many of these individuals that we studied were young people, teenagers, some as well as adults, and we found patterns among all of their stories, all of the surveys, the interviews that we did back in 2022 when we did this study with a team of researchers. We found 8 primary patterns for those that truly, according to their own judgment, overcame depression. And I want to share those with you right now. So number 1 is that they maintained hope. They maintained it. Hope is a critical, there's a reason I put it as number 1. It's because that hope is kind of at the core of, if there is no hope, we found that people that felt like their efforts meant nothing, or that there was no changing this, or that this was locked in, this was a lifelong condition. People that adopted that mindset had either a very difficult time or it was an impossibility for them to overcome in any significant way or improve their situation in any significant way. So hope is a critical aspect. This quote I love, it says, the most important finding in our research is that people have shown significant or complete significant or complete recovery from severe mental illness have cited hope as an extraordinarily important component in their recovery. And there's a lot of ways that we can improve individuals' hope. There's a lot of ways that we, as support members, whether we're a parent, whether we're a brother or sister, whether we're a mentor or a support team member, there's a lot of things that we can do in the language that we provide to them, in the education that we serve up to them, in the conversations that we have with them to help them maintain a sense of hope that there are better days ahead. Number 2, they make lifestyle adjustments. Now, we could spend a lot of time on this one, but I've summarized it here in just kind of a few short slides to identify that they make lifestyle adjustments. Dr. Kelly Turner, who has studied a number of different things, both in the cancer arena as a doctor, but also in the mental health space. And she says that our health, our general health, indeed our entire lives, can be seen as a sum of our moment-to-moment decisions. This includes how we choose to eat, drink, think, and feel, act and react, and move and rest on a given day. These things truly determine our health and even our mental health. And so as we look at ways to improve, now I'll share the fact that less than 3% of Americans are living healthy lifestyles, according to the Mayo Clinic. That is just disturbing. But that is kind of a reality as we take a bird's eye to what to how we live currently. It's definitely there are many of us not living healthy lifestyles. And if you're one of those that are living a totally healthy lifestyle and that your whole family, you're all living very healthy lifestyles, wonderful. Send us how you did it, because many of us struggle to get enough exercise, struggle to eat properly and avoid some of those challenges. And many of us struggle with things like our sleeping patterns, particularly youth, particularly those that are teenagers in high school. Sleep is something that we have a massive deficit for. I love this slide. I love this image because it kind of summarizes. I always say that trying to improve your mental health without also improving your lifestyle is as futile as trying to brush your teeth while simultaneously eating an entire sleeve of Oreos. If you've ever tried it, or you can imagine it, it's not going to work. It's not going to fly. And so, again, when we start to look at improving our individual, but also our children's mental health, lifestyle is a major factor. Let me give you a couple examples of this, actually. So small lifestyle life changes can help tune even one brain circuit. Just a tiny bit can make a surprising ripple effect on the mood. For example, this is Dr. Alex Korb, who's a neuroscientist who wrote the book Upward Spiral. For example, exercise changes the electrical activity in your brain during sleep, which then reduces anxiety, improves mood, and gives you more energy to exercise and interact with others. So it's kind of a rippling effect. Individuals, this is a study conducted by the group in the University of Kansas, and they took two different groups, a control group, which they provided stereotypical and kind of standard approach to addressing mental health through providing them talk therapy and medication, and individuals through that experience in a short time period throughout the study saw a decrease from severe to moderate, which is great. That's life-saving in many cases. But they also deployed a different protocol, and this was a TLCD protocol. So that's therapeutic lifestyle change depression. So looking at therapeutic lifestyle change approach to addressing this depression, they found that individuals went from severe all the way down to minimal during the study. But then as they followed up with them 3 months and 6 months later, those results maintained, which again suggests a long-term sustainable healing model by addressing. By the way, these individuals in the study did not receive this standard approach to addressing mental health. Now, afterward, I think in the study it did mention that many of them did continue or did engage with the therapist ongoing, but helping them engage in these in therapeutic lifestyle change. So this is very hopeful. This is very fruitful information. As we look at some of these individually, nutrition, individuals, according to this study, found that individuals that made specific nutritional adjustments in their life, that 30% no longer had depression at the end of the study. If you look at exercise, this study showed that even a 30-minute brisk walk, 30-minute brisk walks in a week had the same outcome and effect as leading antidepressants. And sleep. Harvard came out with a study just a couple of years ago indicating that individuals that went to bed 1 hour earlier, not even prescribing what to do with that additional hour in the morning. So 1 hour earlier and then waking up 1 hour earlier, that those individuals reduced their risk for depression by 23%. That's a significant, and as you compound, these are individual adjustments, by the way. These studies are only looking at a single adjustment. But as you start to compound multiple adjustments, multiple lifestyle adjustments, you start to see a significant catalytic and compounding upward spiral. Number 3, that they improve their mental diet and their mental rest. And what do we mean by that? Well, we can think about our physical diet. That's paying attention to what comes into our mouths. But our mental diet, I love this quote that we're all pretty sensitive to the way we eat food and how we feel after a meal. I don't think that we have the same sensitivity for what goes in or goes on with the mind, what goes in our psyche. Now, social media plays a big role in this realm, in this moment, because social media is often where youth are exposed to things that can be negative and harmful. In fact, social media is the common place where youth are exposed to mature content, the most common place where youth are exposed to mature content and interaction, bad language, extreme ideas, and even become victims of perpetrators and cyberbullying. And so what we're taking into our psyche, taking into our minds, both in the entertainment we watch, the activities that we engage in online and offline, has an influence on us. And we are exposed to more negative things today, or our youth are exposed, have access to more negative influences today than any other generation in the history of the world, point blank. And there's no question about that. And that is having a consequence. And so we need to, as parents, recognize them and help teach. So with all these things, this is what we hope for, as we get to the end of this list. We hope that you take each of these things, not only recognize them for their value in the process of overcoming mental health challenges, but also think of ways in which we can then support and influence and sustain our youth and our kids in the process of adhering to these things, or either from preventative measures, or if they're struggling, adjustments that can have these influences. And so as we look at this, just telling your kid, hey, you should get off social media because it's bad, they're probably going to say, you don't get it because, you're old. But as we start to educate them and use both the science and our own values and combine that and feed that up and use opportunities to introduce them to, whether it be documentaries or articles or short, clips that help them understand these influences on their life, they will start to be empowered and energized to go along and go in that lane to help make improvements for themselves, because they'll see, like, this is not the life that I want. Number 4, they learn how to mindfully approach thoughts and emotions. Now, this is difficult, particularly for youth. It's difficult for adults, but particularly for youth, this is challenging, to look at thoughts and ideas that come into our minds and not think that they are a reflection of who we are, not identifying with them immediately. A good way to think of this is looking at our thoughts, maybe more like weather patterns above. As you can see, the stable ground beneath stays steady and constant, whereas the weather above gets cloudy and dark at times, and then sunny and light, and it's just kind of this free-flowing, ever-changing environment. And our thoughts and our minds can often feel that chaotic and random at times. And thoughts can come into our minds about our worth and who we are as in our identity that can kind of really throw us through a loop, especially if we feel that those, if we immediately identify with them and say, I am a bad person, or that I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I'll never be able to X, or I'll never get over this. Those types of feelings and emotions can really pull us and drag us down. Whereas if we look at them simply as weather patterns overhead, so individuals that overcame depression got good at recognizing the difference and separating themselves from those emotions, from those thoughts, and letting them just have space and not being swept up into the current of those emotions, but giving them space and letting them subside and kind of swell and subside on their own. Again, I know easier said than done, but it is a thing that you can exercise and you can actually practice to get better. And there's ways that youth can, there are books for young kids to practice mindfulness behaviors. that are available to help them go to sleep or help them address certain challenges. I can maybe send a link to one that I use with my youth, my children. If they're young, as they get older, there are the resources amplify and increase, and there's a lot more things you can point to help them improve in that area of mindfulness. So you don't have to think of like crossing your legs and sitting crisscross applesauce and dressing in a robe on a mountaintop while you shave your head. You don't have to think like extreme meditation. Meditation can be something, or mindfulness can be something that you practice day to day at your desk, on your way to school, whatever it may be. And it's something that can really help address those emergency moments. Mindfulness has been shown to decrease relapse for depression by 50%. So it is something that has been proven to be very influential and powerful. They address and work through past trauma. Now, I know that when we talk about kids and youth, you might be saying, well, they don't have anything. They've never been to war. They don't have trauma in their life. And although we know, as we sit back and we say, okay, no, there are a lot of kids that have gone through traumatic events. But what we're finding in the research is that I think that more young people today are experiencing what is referred to as micro traumas than you would think. What we are exposed to, even exposure to serious and hardcore pornography online and adult content online at a young age can result in what researchers are referring to as micro traumas. And as you compound multiple micro traumas, and social media can be with all the influence and cyberbullying and the predators that can kind of infiltrate one's profile and be exposed to that information, those can add up to, as they are individual micro traumas, can scale up into having a similar effect as full-on trauma that these young people, although they haven't experienced, perhaps in some cases, or in many cases, hopefully haven't experienced anything like major events that are traumatic, death in the family, or things like war, but these micro traumas are having a profound influence on them. So rather than asking what's wrong with somebody, we should be asking what happened, or what have they been exposed to, or what have they seen, what has influenced them, and having a more compassionate take on that trauma. Number 6, they seek community support. Today's youth are more lonely than ever before. If you look at boomers, 50% identified, this is a study not too long ago, 50% identified that they felt somewhat lonely or had felt lonely in their life. Millennials, that increased to 71%, and Gen Z to nearly 80%. So loneliness is a major factor. It's funny that we're so connected and yet we're so disconnected in today's world. We're head in a screen, and that is causing us to have those feelings of loneliness, and that has had a major negative impact. Number 7, they deepen their spirituality and/or purpose, their meaning and purpose in life. And some find that through religious practice or through spirituality. Others find it through service, and others. But those that overcame depression almost across the board deepened or found a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. And for time's sake, I'm just going to skip through here to get to number 8. They reduce their dependency on external substances. Now, that was more profound for the adults, but we even found, even with the medications, many of them that found long-lasting healing, many of them did taper down on their medications and didn't rely so much on them to be the solution. And many of them tapered down, and with the assistance of medical professionals, even tapered off, and eventually no longer needed those medications to maintain again as they overcame it. But we did see a tapering, and we did see a reduction, whether that be medication or even substances. Again, for the older audiences, with substances like alcohol and other things, and relying on those substances. So again, here they are. I want you to kind of just back up and say, like, they maintained, actually, let me jump into this quote, and I'll come right back into that list. So yes, so number 1, they maintain hope, they make lifestyle adjustments, they improve their mental diet, they learn how to mindfully approach their emotions, they address and work through past trauma, they seek community support, they deepen their spirituality and purpose, and they reduce their dependency on external substances. I'm telling you, we found these 8 patterns consistently consistently among those that had claimed that they had overcome depression and or anxiety. And as you look at this list, you can, many of us look at this and say, I could do better in many of these areas. I need to do better. So I want you to kind of like take a mental shot, take a screen capture, whatever you need to do to remember these things. And as things come up with your youth, and as you start to work through things for them, this is a great guiding influence on how to maybe make some small adjustments that can have catalytic and compounding influence on their mental health. Now, I know we are probably done here, Brittany, so I'm going to jump off here and conclude. Dr. Laura Delano, who I don't have time to tell her story, but she suffered from depression. She was suicidal. She was in the hospital many different times of her life. She finally realized, and that this is a quote, her talking to her 13-year-old self when she was diagnosed. She said that if I could talk to my 13-year-old self, I would say that your urge to die is really an urge to live, just in an entirely different way than you know. And I love that because, again, she, in this moment, recognized that those early signs of depression were signals to make adjustments that she later made in a later time in her life, but she wished she would have made earlier. And I love this by Dan Millman, as a quote I often use. It says, the secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Rather than fighting the depression, what are we creating in our lives? What kind of things are we moving toward that will make the depression kind of subside and move away? And addiction too. We say the same thing for individuals overcoming pornography or other forms of addiction. As we move towards and build a new life and focus on that relationship, focus on addressing properly past challenges, and meaning and purpose is a huge one, and key lifestyle indicators. As we start to build those up, the depression starts to lose its power over us. Dr. Alex Korb, which we quoted earlier, he said that everything is interconnected. Gratitude improves sleep. Sleep improves pain. Reduced pain improves your mood. Improved mood reduces anxiety. Lower anxiety improves focus and planning. Focus and planning helps decision-making. And decision-making improves enjoyment, and enjoyment gives you more gratitude, which keeps that upward spiral going. Again, I think that there's excitement to realize that as we make small, even micro adjustments in our lives, that they have a ripple and compounding influence on our ability to make other adjustments, which just accelerates that upward spiral. I don't have time to talk about this, but I know that many of you have questions on how to navigate some of these challenges. And it was referenced earlier, Brittany brought this up, but there's a free resource and app to help parents navigate the challenges of today's digital landscape, and helping parents improve their relationship with their child, confront cyberbullying, protect against online predators, navigate inappropriate content, and manage screen time balance. And this is, again, a free resource at joinraise.com. You can go in, you can download the app, Raise Parenting, search that in the App Store, and get started. It's a great resource, and I wish we had more time to talk more about that. But I appreciate the time, and I'll conclude with these three thoughts. The mental health and addiction are part of the modern life, but they don't have to define yours or your kids, that there is hope. Number two, that therapy and medication can be very important, but they're not enough on their own. There is healing. And number three, that we all need greater wellness and can experience thriving and fulfillment. There is happiness. Hope, healing, and happiness is what we work for. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Wow, Clay, thank you. Thank you. That was so informative and inspiring. And wow, I'm just like thinking about all of my favorite outdoor activities. And like, I am going hiking this weekend. There's all these things I just put off, and I'm just going to go and do them because they're important for my mental health, and to be an example to my children too about all the lifestyle changes that are important, and so much good information. Okay. Let's get to a couple questions. First of all, a couple people have asked, what was that book that you mentioned for mindfulness for children?
Yes, I'm gonna have to send it to you. I use it. It's a wonderful book that actually has multiple different meditations, and you read it. It's a really short. We do it for bedtime most often, but they're really short, and they just have different scenarios and characters that kind of walking them through different mindfulness practices, breathing exercises, even kind of ways to visualize certain things that just calm them down at times. But they have different scenarios throughout the book, and it's a beautiful book. So, Brittany, I'm going to get that name when I get home tonight. I'm going to send it to you and you can add it to the notes. I
Perfect.
apologize, I don't have it right here in front of me.
That's okay. We will add it to the recording as well on the website when we get that posted, so people can have quick access to that. Okay. So someone asked, how do I best protect my child from being exposed to technology micro traumas?
Ooh, good question. See, look at them using the term micro trauma. I like it. Well, okay, that is a great question, Brittany. Like, let's tackle this together because there's a lot of things that we can do as parents, and it depends a lot on the details of your current situation. Whoever's asking the question around, like, how old is your child, or are they young and they're aging into maybe getting access to technology? In my home, we definitely limit access to technology, but we also recognize that technology is an important part of our lives and it's an empowering part of our lives. So there are moments in which we definitely, we love to sit down and watch movies together as a family. We love, there are programs that my daughters engage and my older daughters engage with online that help them learn and kind of gamify a learning experience. And these are wonderful ways to engage. On a personal note, I have, and you can take this for what it's worth, but for my kids, we have had conversations with my older two daughters. My youngest is 1.5. Haven't had conversations with her yet. Well, we have conversations, but the translation is not there yet. My 5-year-old, I still haven't had these conversations with, but my older two, they're 8 and 11. We have had conversations where we've actually had kind of an agreement between us, and even a contract. We call it a contract, but a contract where they have kind of committed to not having social media in high school. Now, that's not for everybody. Some parents, can navigate this other ways, but that's what we have decided in our home. And we've even had a kind of an incentive at the end if they can do that, if they fulfill that at the end of high school. Not getting social media, that they kind of earn something that we're investing some money for them that they can collect at that time, and they're excited about it, and they're young enough where we're kind of educating on the reasons why, and they are like, yes, I don't want that. I'm going to be in it. And I know my oldest is now, well, she's just about to turn 12, and she's already entering into an age where, like, there's a lot of other influences pushing her to maybe consider it. But we had those conversations so early that it's really shaping the way she even addresses with her friends the topic of social media, like from the get-go, rather than saying, hey, what is that? Hey, how come I don't have that? It's more of like, oh, I know what that is, and I've committed not to do it, and here's kind of the benefit for that for me. We intend to inform them along the way. There's a documentary, The Social Dilemma is a great documentary on social media that we intend to watch a little as she turns 15. We intend to watch that with her. But anyway, there's a number of things that you can do. I think social media can be navigated, but there's just so much data around young girls and social media that we have opted down this path, and that is just what we decided to do. But again, it's not for everybody. What about you, Brittany?
Well, I love your plan. I love your approach with your kids. My oldest is 16. She does not have social media yet. And the other day, it's interesting, we had a conversation. I said, what do you think about, do you want social media? And she was like, well, she knows what I do. She hears a lot about the harms of it from me. And she's also heard about it from her friends. Her friends say to her, don't get social media. It's so awful. It sucks you in, and there's all these, awful things. And so she's has kind of this healthy fear of it. But she also, we talked about, maybe when you're ready for social media, maybe it's something that we just navigate together. Maybe I get an account for you on my phone and we sit down maybe once a week and you can post something or look at what your friends are doing, whatever. We haven't really figured that out yet. So it's still definitely something that we're having conversations about. But something I really like that you said is the conversation piece, like talking about it, from the earliest ages. And it's never too late to start that conversation, but talking about things like sexuality, for example. You're going to be exposed to a lot of harmful, adult content that could be considered a micro trauma. But if you talk about that ahead of time with your kids and help them understand what they might be exposed to and what healthy sexuality looks like and what it looks like to treat people with respect and dignity, then they'll have some sort of armor on when they go and when they are exposed to those things. So I think there's a lot of
Yeah, and
conversations.
let me follow up with that and say, like, well, Colin Karshner's quote that I used earlier in the presentation, when we give our kids smartphones without any conversation, without any guidance, without any training, how are we then surprised when they crash and burn or get exposed and struggle with these things? So in the event that you do decide that you want to give your child a smartphone with full access to the internet, there are less than smartphones like the Trumi phone, Gab phone, Pinwheel phone. There are some others that you can like really look at, and I really recommend because they give them all the necessary tools without access to the internet, which could expose them to these things. And by the way, there's a lot of research that suggests if they delay access to social media to where they're 18, 19 years old, the likelihood that they will struggle in the same ways that it had affected their peers that did get access to social media is dramatically reduced. So there's a lot of research as to why I'm pushing the delay of getting access to social media. But again, in the event that I just decide to say, okay, let's give you social media at a younger age in high school or even middle school, I would be vigilant on the educational side of things. I would make sure that they're fully knowledgeable. And not from a finger wagging kind of a parenting kind of way, but rather kind of a like, let's do this together. Let's talk about this so that they can be empowered and recognize these issues. Many of the kids that we've spoken to that don't have social media, they actually thank their parents when they have this realization later on and say, yeah, that was probably a good idea. Even when they were fighting, kicking and screaming. Andrea Davis gives a great example of this I don't know if she talked about this in your webinar previously, but she gives a great example of her daughter who was 16 or 17 when she took her phone away and they gave her a dumb phone, which she always kind of says it's never too late. Even once you've given it, there's a way. And that same daughter years later was thanking them. So I don't want this to be about like, there's no good in social media and it's like there's no benefits to it. Of course there are some benefits to it, and there's some social benefits, and as a teen there are some things that are kind of nice to be included in, but more and more parents are waking up, more and more youth, thanks to those educated parents, are waking up to maybe there's an alternative, maybe there's another way. And a lot of the parents of our kids that we're friends with, we're talking openly with with those other parents and agreeing, okay, so we're not doing this, okay, so let's delay on this so that we can be unified, so that my daughter doesn't come to me and say I'm the only one. It's like, no, you're not. No, I know the pals. They're for sure on board, and we've committed to this together. And I would say Raise, the app that I mentioned, helps you do that. And as parents get educated, it encourages kind of unifying as a community around that. So anyway, that was a long-winded answer, and maybe not exactly what they were hoping to hear, but the point is that education is a fundamental core, and I would advise on delaying whatever you can delay, and as long as you can delay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Particularly on social media.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for questions today. I wish we could talk all day. We could learn so much from you, Clay. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's been fun.
Our sincerest thanks to all of you for tuning in, not only to strengthen your homes and your families, but to support your communities and an entire generation of youth. So watch your email for a link to the recording, as well as a feedback form that we welcome you to fill out. And if you did have a question that you didn't get answered today, there is a spot in that feedback form to ask that question, and we can reach out to Clay and get answers to any questions that you might have. So we highly value any input that you give us on that feedback, and we will use that to make next year's event even more empowering. So you can also access the recordings at projectstand.org/speakers if you want to go there and get those. I just want to thank our incredible sponsors, as well as the entire team at Project Stand for their hard work for months on end for making this speaker series a success. Valerie, Chelsea, Erin, Jen, Carrie, Kate, Tiffany, Nicole, David, Jill, Kennedy, and Kathleen. We couldn't do this without you. And of course, to Clay and Andrea and Deanna and Dawn for their incredible presentations. Thank you so much.